right. So we're going to be talking about whether we believe it is better to buy games on release or whether it is better to wait and buy them later. So when it comes to when I buy games, I am typically the kind of person who tries to buy them sooner rather than later. And the reason that I do that is mostly because I would love to be on top of things, but my backlog is huge, so I'm almost never on top of things. But a lot of times there are pre-order bonuses, and I am kind of a sucker for some of those pre-order bonuses. So I have a bad habit of trying to buy things or pre-order them, which I know everyone now these days are like, stop pre-ordering, don't do that. But I'm part of the problem. So I often do buy them quite early, but then I end up playing them much, much, much later, uh, because I do have to worry about my backlog. So, for example, with Final Fantasy 15, when I got that, I got it shortly after release, prior to when all the DLC came out. But I didn't even end up playing it until after Royal Edition was out, which was, quote unquote, the complete version. So the version that I played was not the version that I bought. So now there are advantages to both sides. One advantage of buying it early is that you can avoid spoilers, obviously, because nobody's been spoiling it yet. And also, you can kind of see the progression of the game. Also, if you're the kind of person that likes exploits, buying it on release is the best time to get it because you can really take advantage of some of those exploits that are going to get patched out later on. For example, in the original Destiny, they had the loot cave, which was later patched out, but a lot of people early on were just going to that loot cave and just grabbing tons and tons of stuff, and that will give you an advantage later on. Now, in some games it's not going to help as much, but usually there's some kind of money exploit or something like that that gives you an advantage. So if you're the kind of person that likes to kind of cheat the system, buying it on release actually might be a good idea. uh, so games that I bought on release, but then versus games that I've waited for, games that I bought on release were Ghost of Tsushima, Catherine Full Body, and Windbound, of which the only one that I have played is Ghost of Tsushima, and I am not even halfway through that yet. So it's going to be a while before I buy the other ones. Ones that I kind of waited for, Final Fantasy 15. I got it on release, but then actually my wife got it for, I don't remember if it was for my birthday or for Christmas, but she bought me the Chinese Korean version, and my Chinese is okay, but it's not enough to navigate Final Fantasy level dialogues. So it was a little bit difficult for me to read. So I ended up rebuying it much, much, much later. The Mass Effect trilogy I did not buy until the PS4 was already out. I Back when they were offering PS Plus games for PS3 for free, they offered, I think it was Mass Effect 2, and then later on, right before Mass Effect Andromeda came out, I thought, you know what, I should play this series to see if I want to get Mass Effect Andromeda. They were on sale, so then I bought 1 and 3 and played through the entire trilogy. So I mean, that was years later. And also Persona 5, which I've been wanting to play, but I still to date haven't even bought it. And now they have Persona 5 Royal Edition, so if I do get it, I'll probably get that. And in the case of Final Fantasy, and in the case of all three of these, Final Fantasy 15, Mass Effect, and Persona 5, uh, when I played Mass Effect, I played the full trilogy at once. I got the full game. When I played Final Fantasy 15, I got the Royal Edition, which was, they added extra quests and they filled out a lot of things that people had been complaining about with the base game. And even with Persona 5 Royal Edition, it adds a lot of content onto the original game. So, in that sense, it's kind of advantageous to wait. Uh, but I'm the kind of person who I really wish I could be on top of things, uh, because it is exciting to be part of the cultural experience as opposed to following the cultural experience. Now, I do feel that this kind of changes things when it comes to live service games. For example, games like Destiny or Genshin Impact. A lot of these games have timed events, and as you all know, I don't usually jump games, but I did jump from Ghost of Tsushima to Genshin Impact purely because they had a timed event that would be gone. So if I want to unlock certain things, I have to jump on that right away. So if you do wait, you are likely to miss out on a lot of the early content. A lot of games now have release content. It's kind of like the pre-order bonuses. I know every time a new uh, at least up to date, every time they have a new Little Big Planet, for the first week or month or whatever, they have a free DLC where you can download basically a day one T-shirt for Sackboy to wear, and then after that, it's gone. So, being able to get some of these things early, really, you can get some benefits because obviously, this is really a way for the publishers to get an idea of is this game going to be successful or not. And also, if you don't jump on them early, there's a risk that a game could die. When Battleborn and Overwatch came out, they basically both did a kind of a free beta, and I think Battleborn was done for 1 month, and then the next month was Overwatch. So when I played Battleborn, after I played it, I was like, oh, I actually really want to get this game. I ended up actually buying the game, but a lot of people didn't, and now the servers are dead. So even if I wanted to play Battleborn, I can't anymore. I don't know if they made an offline, if they made it so you could play offline, but there's no option to play with my friends anymore, even if they did pick it up. Another good example is Disintegration, which is made by Bungie, which they released just a few months ago, and that game has already been taken down. So if you don't jump on a game at release, especially for these live service games, that could be a signal for the publisher to, you know what, this isn't going to make us any money, and it dies when had it stayed up for a while. You know, maybe it just took a while for the fan base to build up. I mean, let's look at Anthem, for example. Anthem came out, it had a lot of hype, and then a lot of people bought it, and then they were just really, really disappointed with it. So a lot of people jumped ship, and now they're saying that they're going to be making a 2.0, but they've been kind of slow in that. So is Anthem going to come back? It's supposed to, but it hasn't yet. So with live action games, jumping on them at release, or sorry, not live action, with live service games, jumping on them early is really, really important. As far as do I think games will ever come out fully working? I mean, we're living in a time where, you know, like I said, the full game comes way later. For example, Final Fantasy 15, you know, only the Royal Edition, which came out, what, 3 years later, was the full version. And then games are patched for a long, long time. I mean, how many games come out now these days without a day one patch? Almost none. Almost everything has a day one patch. So do I think we're ever going to go back to the time where we get games that come out of the gate fully working? Probably not too much, with the exception of indies. There are some indies that come out. You know, these are smaller games, so they're simpler, so they don't need as much patching. And also, I think Final Fantasy, I think to date, Final Fantasy VII Remake has not received a patch, or maybe it received one, which is really, really interesting. And then also, I don't remember if Valkyria Chronicles had patches or not. They might have. So, but I don't really think we're going to see too much of that. So, what about you, Korean? Are you the kind of guy who likes to jump on the train as soon as it's out of the station, or wait until it's, you know, a little ways down the track?
Well, for me, I would, as I said before, Adam and I have talked about this. I used to buy early because I would be so excited, and I do like the pre-order bonuses. I remember one of the games that I bought early and I was so happy with just because of the pre-order stuff was Unreal Tournament 2004. I was living in Ireland or maybe in America at the time. It came with this like really cool tin case, and I'm pretty sure I still have it somewhere. In Taiwan, I bought the Tomb Raider games when they were re-released in sort of like that action puzzle genre, and it came with like a water flask and a bunch of cool stuff like a compass. I bought an Assassin's Creed game. It came with some cool art. So, in that sense, if some games have like really cool stuff right now, stuff that you'd get when you pre-order, I would definitely pre-order it. Post launch, Stardew Valley has this really cool collector's edition that I would love to buy, but it's crazy expensive. Now, I think I'm not sure. I would definitely tend to wait. I was going to talk to Adam about this later about us potentially being day one players of Cyberpunk and streaming that together, potentially, or Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which is also really doing well in terms of hype these days.
Or Among Us?
Or Among Us, yes, yes, Among Us is doing really well as well. Oh, Adam, I was going to ask you. So, like you mentioned, Ghost of Tsushima.
Yes.
So you would consider that buying it on release?
Well, I actually pre-ordered it,
Oh, you pre-ordered it. Oh, okay.
and I just never got around to playing it.
Ah, because I was like,
This is what I'm saying. Yeah, I tend to buy games on release, but then I don't play them until much later.
okay. I had another question. As a PC player, there's usually, I would even say, in my later years in life, you buy games on release. With very few exceptions, games have issues. When I started playing Skyrim, when I played this game, which I will show you briefly before we switch back to Adam, um, if you guys can see my topic, which is this game called Grey Goo. Grey Goo was this cool strategy game. I bought it upon release. I always wanted to play it. I installed it through Steam. Never worked. Contacted the developers. They said you should do this or do this. Still never worked. This is a game I paid full price for, or relatively $40 US. Have not played it to this day. Loved it from what I could watch on YouTube anyway. And no, can't work. I've got a few other games on my PC list like that that just don't work. And that's the thing that sort of like really set it for me. But now, I mean, if I buy a game on release and it does work, I'm okay. What I was going to ask you, Adam, in on consoles, has that ever been an issue? Have PlayStation people or maybe Xbox bought a game, popped it into their system, and it just doesn't work?
I have not heard about that. The closest I could think of as an unworkable game would be what, Superman 64. I think there's definitely though a little more regulation in the consoles where, for instance, in Steam. I mean, did you get Grey Goo on Steam or?
Steam.
Okay, so Steam's kind of notorious for anything goes, right? And then fix it later, right? So on consoles, I think it's more like, for example, the iTunes store or the Apple store, where they really kind of make sure that everything's working in working order or represents what they want it to represent before they even allow it on the store. So I think in consoles, in a way, there's probably a little more. I'm trying to think of how to say it. I think on consoles they tend to check things a little more thoroughly to make sure that they're actually
Yes.
working prior to releasing them. Now, in the case of Grey Goo, I think your problem is very obvious that they spelled the word gray wrong. It should be Gray, not EY. So that's very clearly the issue that they had. I'm totally unbiased opinion, but
Ah, Grey Goo. Okay. What about? Have you bought PlayStation games and had issues with them upon release or later on when you decided to start playing them?
I've never had. I mean, okay, there's always glitches and bugs and things like that, and I've definitely had them, but I've never had a game where it just wouldn't really function. I've had games that would crash relatively consistently early on. I think Mass Effect was it Mass Effect? My Mass Effect 1. Okay, the closest that I've ever had was between Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect 2. You're supposed to have your save data carry over from the first game to the second game, and there was a bug on PS3 that for some odd reason a lot of people were having where your Mass Effect 1 data would be corrupted in such a way that you could still use it in Mass Effect 1, but you couldn't use it in Mass Effect 2. Now, the Mass Effect 2, when it came out, the fix to this was it came with kind of a, you know, last time on Mass Effect kind of comic book thing that you could, it was like an interactive comic book and it would kind of tell you the story and then it would get the story beats and you can make a selection like which character did Shepard romance or did Shepard not romance any characters?
I remember.
Did you choose to save the uh, whoever? So you could do that interactive comment and then kind of get back some of your choices, but you had to run through that. You couldn't use your save data, and I don't think that ever got fixed. But as far as playability, I've never had a game that just was completely unplayable on release.
Okay. That's definitely the advantage of consoles, and I've had people argue with me about it in the past that consoles are uniform, that all the hardware is the same, so it's easy to program for. It's not like PCs where I have a GTX 1080, my brother has a GTX 1050, my other brother has an AMD Radeon, and the motherboards and the CPUs and the amount of RAM is different, and the version of Windows is different, and the screen or resolution is different. Whereas in consoles, you can program for a fairly uniform set of circumstances.
Right.
Yes. So, which is an advantage, which always, as whenever we have these talks, it always makes me think, Korean, don't buy a GTX 3080 or 3070. Just buy a PS5.
I saw you on Twitter. You said something about an Xbox.
Oh, on Xbox as well. See, all this stuff is just running through my mind. I'm like, oh, I'm terrible when it comes to purchase decisions. I don't know if I've ever told Adam before. Like whenever I want to buy something, I always spend like months, 1, 2, 3 months, looking at videos, researching, and before finally buying something because I just go crazy with all the reading.
No, I follow my heart. I look at something, I'm like, that looks like a game I want to play, and then look at maybe 3 reviews, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get it, or nah, I'm not going to.
With games, I don't have the problem with like hardware choices, like with the Samsung S20. I mean, I spent months researching and watching videos and look at it, and I'm like convincing the girlfriend, like, oh, I want to spend $1,000 on a cell phone, and she's like, what?
Yeah, my cell phone's getting weird. I probably should update at some point too.
Now you can pick up an iPhone 12 mini and fill us in on
Ooh,
what it's like.
iPhone. Ooh, no, no, ooh. Ugh.
All right, Adam. Then maybe we'll call that for today. And
Sounds good to me.
okay, so as always, please feel free to contact us on Twitter at GamingAged, Facebook at MiddleAgeGaming 2020, Instagram at MiddleAgeGaming. I hope you enjoyed the show today, and if you want to do more, please like this. Please leave us a message or comment or thought. We recently got our first comment, which we didn't notice until we were preparing for this show. Thank you for that. Please keep an eye out for the broadcast of our games only show airing after this. It will be live, so please enjoy it. Moving into next week, we might change the format again. Uh, please watch social media. I will do my best to post about it after Adam and I have a few more discussions about what we exactly want to do.
And if you prefer email, we are still looking forward to the crazy long message. So drop us a line at middleagegaming2020@gmail.com. We'd really love to get your thoughts on what is going on in the world of gaming. So follow our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that way you can be notified when we go live. So Korean and I are now streaming exclusively to Middle Age Gaming on Twitch, so please hit that follow button so you know when we're going live and you can watch us. And if you take a quick break, then we'll be back in 10 minutes for the game show. See you there.